Hi friends, today I will explain about stored procedures in Snowflake. So what is a stored procedure? Some sample procedures in Snowflake, and what is the difference between user defined function and stored procedure, and how we can create stored procedures by using Snowflake scripting as well as by using JavaScript. We'll see theoretically and practically today. So coming to the stored procedures, okay. Stored procedures allow you to write procedural code that includes SQL statements, conditional statements, looping statements, and you can even use cursors. Okay. So with a single SQL query, what you can do, if you are writing some SQL query, you can do just, you can execute one line of statement, right? So, but I want to execute multiple statements. I want to uh, do my all data processing within one stored procedure. So you cannot do that by using simple SQL query, right? So you have to combine all those SQL queries and you want to run them. So how can you do that? So we have programming languages in general also, like C programming, Java programming, Python programming, Unix programming. There also we create some kind of scripts, right? If we want to execute multiple things or a set of statements, so we write programs like that. We write procedures here in Snowflake or in any database. They support stored procedures, right? So here we can write procedures with a set of statements. So here not only SQL statement, but also we can manage like a conditional statement like if else, okay, looping statements like for loop, while loop, and even if we want to do row by row processing, we use cursors. So we can do anything. If I want to execute, if I want to derive some functionality, if I want to calculate something, okay, or if you want to process my data, we can create procedures with a set of statements, and you can do anything. You can do looping, you can do conditional. That means based on some conditions, if you want to process data, you can mention if else, okay. If you want to repeatedly do something, okay, you can use loops. And if you want to do row by row processing, you can use cursors, okay. So like this we can write stored procedures in Snowflake, okay. And Snowflake support 5 languages for writing procedures like user defined functions. Here also we can write stored procedures in 5 different languages. The first thing is Snowflake scripting. This is nothing but SQL only, okay. SQL stored procedures. The second one is JavaScript, then Java, Scala, Python. So you can write in any of these languages. But I have seen mainly the people are writing stored procedures in either Snowflake scripting or in JavaScript. Okay, I haven't seen this much. Okay, these are the two popular languages where people write stored procedures: Snowflake scripting and JavaScript. We'll see one example for both of these. Okay, so first, from a stored procedure, you can return a single value or tabular data. So like user-defined functions, you can return a single value, or even you can return a table of data as output from the stored procedure. Or you can perform insert operations, delete, update, anything you can do inside the stored procedures. Okay, and it supports branching and looping. I said right, branching is nothing but based on some conditions, you can control the data flow like if else condition. Okay, and it supports looping, like if you want to use for loop or while loop, okay, you can use in the stored procedures. Okay, and dynamically creating a SQL statement and execute it. So if you don't need to exactly pass the run the exact SQL query. You can generate the SQL query, okay, inside the stored procedures, and you can execute it. Like suppose I'm passing some parameters for my procedure, okay. Based on the parameters, I want to build my SQL query and execute it. So that means dynamically we are generating the SQL query at runtime and executing it. So we can do any of these things, okay. So this is about stored procedures. I think you must have some basic idea. It's like any other language. It's any other database. Okay. But there the other databases, the limitation is there we use only SQL stored procedures. But here we can use any of these things. Okay. We can write stored procedures in any of these languages. So when it comes to a sample stored procedure, this is the way we create. Okay. Create or replace procedure For functions, we mention like create or replace function, but here create or replace procedure, okay, and the procedure name, and the arguments are optional. You can mention or you can ignore. That means it's based on your requirement. Okay, if I want to pass arguments, I can pass any number of parameters here. Okay, and here also we have to mention the return type, whatever you are returning. It can be a single value of varchar or number, okay, or date. Okay, otherwise if you want to return the table data, you can mention, okay, returns table, and you have to mention the field names. Okay, and here in this example, okay, I'm writing the script. I'm writing the stored procedures in JavaScript language. Okay, and like UDFs, here also the syntax is same. You have to mention as, okay, create this function with the return type varchar with the language JavaScript as, and you have to mention all your code in, okay, in the $$ symbol. Okay, and here I'm executing one sample SQL statement. Okay, this is how we have to execute in JavaScript. But in SQL language, we can simply write this statement, insert into this table, select one as simply we can execute this. But if we want to execute the same in JavaScript, so we have to put it in some this functions like Snowflake execute. Okay, so this is one of the function available for running JavaScript in JavaScript for executing the SQL statements. Okay, so this is snowflake.execute, and this is the SQL text I want to execute. Okay, so this is syntax snowflake.execute, okay, and SQL text. Then I have to put the actual SQL text here, which I want to execute. Okay, and this result of this statement will be stored in the variable rs result set. Okay, so you can give any name to your variable. So this is how we declare variables. Okay, variable rs, and I'm storing the result set of the statement in the result set variable. Okay, and here I don't have anything to return because I'm just inserting the data into a table, so there will be no return type. That's why if we have any type of situation like this, that means if we are simply inserting or deleting or updating the data, there will be no return type. If you are selecting the data, there will be some return data. But if you are doing some DML operations like insert, update, delete, there will be no return type. So in that case, what you can do, you can simply return done. Okay, so at the end you can simply return done, because here we mentioned return type as a varchar, so I'm just writing return done. Okay, so this is how we write stored procedures. Okay, we'll see in detail while executing the lab part. Okay, so these are the differences between UDFs and procedures. Okay, so stored procedures may or may not return results. Okay, it may or may not return. Just now we have seen, right? So it was not returning any result because it was executing some DML operations, and we just for namesake we have just returning uh, as done. So it's not a mandatory for stored procedures to return some results, but for functions it must return results. Okay, it can be a value or it can be a table. It must return some results for the input we are passing, or every time if we are calling a function, it should return a results. Okay, it can be a value, it can be a table with a 0 rows or 1 row or multiple rows. Okay, and procedures are called as independent statements. So how we execute the procedures? By using simple call space procedure name. That's it. So we can execute the procedures as individual statements. But when it comes to the function, you cannot execute the function individually. So you have to put your function in the SQL statement. Suppose I am selecting star from some table along with the all fields. I can call this function there. We'll see in the example how we execute as part of SQL statement. And values written by procedures are not directly usable in SQL. Okay, suppose I'm running a procedure by using executing. So that result or that output I cannot use directly in any of the other SQL statements. Suppose I have a big SQL query there. If I want to call the stored procedures inside that SQL query, I cannot do that. So but functions we can do. Okay, suppose I have a big SQL query, inside I am calling a function. That means I'm using the output of that function in that query. Okay, and single procedure per call statement. So whenever you are executing at one time, you can only execute one procedure. Okay, for a call, by using this call statement, you can execute only one procedure at one time. But in the functions, in one SQL statement, you can mention any number of functions. Okay, in my SQL statement, I have suppose I have 4 user-defined functions. I can use all of them. That means within the one SQL statement, you can call any number of functions. And the procedures can execute DDL and DML operations. Okay, inside the procedure, you can even create the tables. So while discussing about the table types, like we had discussed 3 tables: permanent tables, temporary tables, and transient tables. So here we mainly um, create temporary tables for intermediate data storage. We create temporary tables. So procedures allow both the DDL and DML statements. That means you can create or drop the tables, or you can use insert operation, delete operation, and update operation. Anything you can do. But UDFs, you cannot, you will not have access even to perform database operations. So it will return some results or it will return some data. That means only select will be supported inside the UDFs. Okay, so these are some differences between stored procedures and UDF. So I'm teaching like you have some basic idea on any programming language. I'm assuming that and teaching you this. Okay, because not only in the real time experience but in your curriculum also. Okay, if you are from computer science background, you must have some idea on procedures and functions, right? That's what I'm assuming. Okay. So this is about the theoretical. Let's practice the procedures thing as well. Okay. Okay. So like this, you can store your queries. Okay, in the worksheets, and you can put them in some folder, all your queries. So now I'm executing the procedure part. Okay. Let's see how to create a procedure and how to call a procedure. Okay. So I am in this database already, my own DB. Okay. And I want to create a schema with the name MYPROCS. Okay, for storing all the procedures I'm going to create. Okay, I have created a procedure. I have created a schema with this name. If you want to see, you can see here. Okay, my own DB. We have created 2 schemas today: my functions and my procedures. Where is my procs? How to refresh it here? So my procs is not available here, right? It's not there. How to refresh this? I'm not sure. There we had some very good refresh button. Okay, that's okay. So we have created this one procedures. It is there. Okay, and I'm setting some data. Okay, for our for writing some procedure. So there are some very basic examples in the Snowflake documentation side, which covers separately, like the cursor part separately. Okay, the for loops separately, for if conditions separately. So I tried to set up some data and write a procedure, including everything in one procedure. Okay, so it's not a difficult one. It's a very easy one. Just try to understand. Okay, so for that I'm creating one table like a customer sales table. Okay, where I have customer ID, customer name, product name, product category, and price. Okay, so let's create a table. And I am inserting the data. So I am inserting some 10 records into this table. Okay, the details will be like the customer ID, customer name, and the product name. Okay, and the product category. Okay, and the price of that product. Okay, so I have created and inserted. I have inserted some 11 rows. Okay, if you want to see the data, you can see by using this. Select star from this table. Okay, and now, so my procedure requirement is I want to calculate. Okay, for each customer. No, for some specific customer. Okay, I want to know how much he is spending on particular category. Suppose user Lata is there. I want to know for my analysis, I want to know how much she is spending on the electronics, how much she is spending on the food. That means I'll pass the user ID and the this product category as inputs, and I want to see some of the amounts. Okay, so how much she is spending total on food. Suppose if you take food, there are she is purchasing almonds, rice, tur dal. Okay, and when it comes to the electronics department, she is purchasing some smartwatch and washing machine. Okay, but I want to see how much a user is spending on particular this one particular product category. Okay, so that is my requirement. Now I want to write a function for this. I want to write a procedure for this. Okay, so let's see how it looks like. So this is as usual. For now I am creating this procedure in the SQL language. In the next example we'll see how to create the same in JavaScript. So if you have 10 minutes, we'll continue today itself. Okay, it won't take much time. It's a simple. Do you have some time today, or you want to leave?
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so anyway, I will take one more session tomorrow for project explanation. Okay, so if you want to continue there we can continue. Otherwise, let me finish this one today itself. Sure, okay. Okay, so see here, create or replace procedure, MYPROCS. So I'm storing this function under MYPROCS schema, and my function name is, my procedure name is customer total price. Okay, customer total price, and I am passing inputs as the customer ID and the product category as inputs. Okay, and I'm returning float type. That means I want to calculate how much the user is spending on particular category, right? That's why I'm returning a float type. Okay, and the language is I'm writing in SQL language. Okay, so now how to write in SQL language? Okay, it contains two sections. Okay, any SQL stored procedure contain two sections. One is declaration of variables and the actual code. So in the other languages, in the other database also, it's like that only, right? There will be a declaration section, then the code section. So the code section will be in between begin and end. Okay, begin and end. Okay, and the declaration part, what I'm declaring. So I want to calculate the total amount spent. Okay, and I am declaring that as a float. And if you have some basic idea on cursors, it will help you. Otherwise, you have to get some knowledge in cursors. Okay, so cursor is nothing but inside the stored procedure only we use cursors. Okay, we don't use anywhere. If you want to do row by row level processing, so suppose when my query has millions of rows, but I want to operate the data row by row. Okay, how can we do that? So we have a feature called cursor. Okay, we'll fetch all the data into cursor, then we'll fetch one by one record from that cursor. So if you want to whenever someone is asking what is a cursor, okay, so suppose if I want to process my data at row level, row by row, I can create a cursor. Okay, and I can fetch the data from cursor by using a for loop or while loop, and I can operate every row like that, you can say. So here I'm declaring one cursor of CUR1 with the name CUR1. This is of cursor type, and in this cursor what I have, what data I have. Okay, so cursor for this data, select customer ID, product category, price from this table. Okay, so I'm selecting three fields from this customer sales table and storing them in the cursor. Okay, suppose if I want to process this data later, I can I can build a for loop, okay, and I can easily do the row by row processing of this data. That's why, so this is the cursor for this data, and I'm storing this in one variable called cursor1. This is of cursor type. So this variable is of type float. This variable is of type cursor. Okay. So I'm writing the code like this. Begin. Okay. Total spent is 0. Initially, I'm assigning 0 to the total spent because I want to calculate this total spent amount at the end. Initially, I'm putting it as 0. Okay. Later, we'll add the based on the products the user is purchasing, we are going to add the amount to this total spent amount. And so if I want to process this cursor data row by row data, so I can write like this for some, this is again some variable for record. If you know some C language or Java language, you write, right? For I equals to 0, I less than 10, I plus plus, like that. This is the I. Okay, so here we can simply put I also. Okay, for I in cursor1, or this is database, right? That's why I'm saying record. For record in cursor1, okay, do. So this is the concept of for loops or while loops. So how you can write for loop for, okay, then do, and at the end you have to do end for. Okay, this is the way we write for loops or while loops in Snowflake scripting. Okay, this is like in other traditional database as well. We write like this only. For record in cursor1, okay, do. If suppose what it will do, whenever we say for record in cursor1, it will fetch one by one row until this cursor is completed. That means all the rows in that cursor will be processed. Okay, so whenever you say like this for cursor, for record in cursor1, that means it is fetching one by one row. Suppose it is fetching the first row. If record that product category equals to category whatever we are passing here. So here I am passing this category, right? Because I want to calculate the total price based on the category. If record this record, so whatever the record we are fetching from this cursor, if for that row, if the product category equals to the category whatever we are passing here, so how to call your parameters inside your stored procedures? Just by putting a colon here. Okay, just by putting a colon here, you can uh, consume the arguments we are passing in the stored procedure. Okay, so like this, whenever my product category equals to this product category, and whenever my CID customer ID equals to the ID here I am passing, then so here if you see I'm using conditional statements as well, if and if. Okay, so this is how we write if and if or else if else if else if else, then at the end we have to write end if. So if you have some basic idea of programming, it is easy for you. Okay, and if this whenever the product category and the customer ID is matching with this, okay, then just increase the total spend, add the price. So whatever the price coming from that row. So here in this cursor we are fetching three details, right? Customer ID, product category, and price. And we are checking the condition based on the product category and based on the CID. And whenever both are matches, then you add that price of that product to the total spent amount. Okay, so initially this is 0, and whenever suppose user 1 is there, user is spending some amount on electronics. So if I am passing electronics here, and that product price will be added to this total spent amount. Just try to understand, this is very easy code only. Okay, okay, like this it will continue. If suppose we are getting the data from this table, right? Whenever it is not matching with these conditions, that means it will ignore that row. Okay, and it will proceed with the next row. So like that, this cursor will be processed until all the rows in that cursor will be completed. This loop will be calculated for all the rows present in that cursor. Okay, like that the cursor will be operated. So here if we see, we are using everything. We are using cursor, we are using looping, we are using conditional statements. So I tried to write a procedure by including everything in a simple procedure. Okay, so like this we are summing up the total spent amount based on the price we are getting from this table. Okay, and at the end what I am returning, this total spent amount what is calculated finally, I am returning that. And for this begin I have to end. So remember, you have to close all your this code statements by using a semicolon. Okay, so end you have to use a semicolon. For return you have to use a semicolon. If you are ending a for loop, okay, at the end you have to put a semicolon. If you are ending if, at the end you have to put a semicolon. Okay, like this you have to use semicolon properly. If you miss single semicolon also, it will throw syntax error, and it's very difficult to identify the syntax errors in stored procedures. I can say this is one of the limitation. Okay, it's very difficult to identify the errors or syntax errors in the procedure. If you miss small thing also, it's very difficult. So even though he is very expert in expert in writing stored procedures, if you ask him a stored procedure big one, he will do some mistakes like syntactical mistakes, like somewhere he is missing semicolon, or somewhere he is using double quotes, or somewhere he is missing the parenthesis, like that. Okay. Okay. For me also yesterday it took some 30 minutes to write this procedure. Somewhere I was missing something. Okay. You cannot remember everything, right? But Google will help you every time. You can get some sample procedure from Google and you can write it. Okay, so I am creating this procedure. Procedure has been created. Now how to execute this procedure? Okay, call procedure schema dot procedure name, and suppose I want to calculate for the user 101 how much he is spending on electronics. Okay, so I have to pass two parameters, the user ID and the electronics. So suppose let's execute this user 101 electronics, how much he is spending. Okay, so it is saying the customer total price is 58,500 for electronics for 101. Let's see in our data. So 101 is the customer RAMU, and if you see there are three records for 101. Two are from electronics and one is from food. So on electronics, how much he is spending? There are two products, a refrigerator and TV. And if you see the amount is 25,000 and 33,500. If you sum up, it will be 58,500. And if you see user Lata is spending a lot of she's purchasing lot of things from food section. Okay, she's purchasing walnuts, she's purchasing almonds, she's purchasing tur dal and rice. Okay, let's see how much she's spending on this one, user 102, and the food category, how much she is spending. So if you want to know, we can just simply pass the parameters and we can get that value. Okay, so like that we can get to anything. And if you see this 103 is not there in our table, so we have only two users. Okay, 101 and 102, but if you are passing 103, so it will simply return as 0. So that means there is no nothing he is spending. But if you want to handle this, if you want to throw some error, so user 103 is not there in the database, so there is some concept called exception handling. Okay, so where you can get some exceptions. Okay, but that is very advanced. No need for you at this point. Okay, so if you want to learn only Snowflake scripting completely, it takes a month for you, but some basic understanding is enough, because you can get the help from Google. Okay, and you can write. Okay, so this is how we write stored procedures in SQL language. Okay, try to practice this and take some examples from Google and try to practice them. Okay. So if you want to execute any statement, so the looping and if conditions, everything is same, like in all other languages, but with minimal changes. But the SQL part, how can you run in Snowflake? That is important, right? If conditions, for loops, okay, everything like mathematical calculations, okay, everything you can get so with some JavaScript knowledge. But if you want to run SQL statement inside the JavaScript, how we do that? Okay, that is important. I am going to tell you only that part. Okay, so suppose if I want to execute any SQL statement inside my JavaScript stored procedure, so it will be like, first of all, we have to prepare that SQL statement. Okay, first of all, we have to prepare that SQL statement and put it in some variable. Okay, suppose this is my SQL statement. I want to delete the data from this table where event year less than 16. This is my SQL statement. So I am putting that SQL statement in one variable called MySQL command. Okay, this is the variable MySQL command. I am putting this query inside that variable. This is the first step. The second step is you have to assign you have to create a executable statement based out of this statement. Okay, so how to do this? First step is preparing a SQL statement. Then second step is making this as a executable Snowflake statement. So how we can do? So again, I'm creating one more variable and storing this executable statement in this statement one. Statement one equals to this is the function we use, Snowflake dot create statement. Okay, Snowflake data create statement. Okay, and within the parenthesis we have to mention SQL text colon and whatever the SQL text you have prepared here. Okay, or you can directly mention this statement here as well, but as a best practice, we first to prepare the SQL commands and then just put that variable here. Or if you want to directly mention, you can mention as well directly this SQL statement here. Okay, and finally we have to execute the statement whatever we prepared. The executable statement we execute by using this. Okay, statement one dot execute. So if we want to execute any SQL statements in JavaScripts, okay, we need three of these. Three we have to calculate in three steps. Okay, first one is preparing the SQL statement. Second one is creating executable part of this SQL statement. Why this is means, suppose if I have some parameters passing from the stored procedure and I want to generate my query dynamically by using those parameters. In that case, this will help. Okay, here there will be one more option called bind. Okay, that is very advanced for you. That's why I'm not teaching you. Okay. Okay, let's see a stored procedure, simple stored procedures. Okay, I want to calculate the row count of a table. That means whenever I pass a table name, okay, to this procedure, it should return a table count. That means row count of the table. So I want to write a procedure in JavaScript. Create or replace procedure. Okay, the procedure name, get row count. Okay, and I'm passing table name as a parameter, which is of varchar type, and I'm returning a float. Okay, I want to return float, and we can mention this as well. If you are sure it's a not nullable column, if you want to return a not nullable field, then you can mention like not null. All this is optional. You can ignore even. Okay, and the language I'm writing in the JavaScript. So you can write in any language, SQL, JavaScript, Java, Python, Scala. Okay, so let's see how we write in JavaScript. So the first thing is I am assigning a variable row count equals to 0 initially. Then in the next step I am just deriving my SQL statement. How? Okay, so select count of star from, okay, select count of star from this one. Okay, and if you see, I'm not passing the table here because I want to get the table whatever is getting passed in the stored procedure statement. Okay, so I'm getting this. So here the limitation is you have to use, even though you're putting in the small letters, but while using here you have to put capital letters. Okay, this is some limitation. Whenever your query is not working in Snowflake, just try to put it in the capital letters. Okay, not only here, I have seen in some situations, whenever your query is not, or function something is not working, okay, just try to put all caps. Okay, then execute your query, it will work. Okay, so I'm select count of star, and from this table whatever I am getting, whatever I'm passing in the stored procedure statement, okay, I'm just using that here. So if you want to combine multiple statements, okay, you have to use plus symbol. I think if you know some Java scripting language idea, you know this already. Okay, select count of star from plus. Okay, if I want to calculate my SQL statement by using some 3-4 statements, so I can combine all of them by using this symbol, plus symbol. Okay, select count of star from this table. Okay, whatever I'm passing from the stored procedure. So now I'm done with the creation of my SQL statement. Now I'm creating one executable SQL statement, a Snowflake executable, by using the statement called variable statement equals to Snowflake dot create statement. Okay, and in the SQL text I am putting this variable, whatever where we have prepared this SQL query, I'm just putting that inside the SQL text, SQL command. Okay, and finally I am creating a variable to store the result of this execution statement. Okay, so variable result equals to I'm executing this statement and storing this result into a variable called result. Okay, so statement dot execute, I'm executing the statement. Okay, and storing the result into a variable called res. So if you want to fetch some values from the result, okay, so what we have to do, we have to use like a function called next, result dot next. That means if you want to go, suppose here we are returning only one row, which is row count, but if there are multiple rows in the result, if you want to go with the next result, okay, with the next row, how can you do that in JavaScript? By using next statement, result dot next. Suppose if I have 10 rows, if I want to go through all the rows, what I can do, result dot next, I can write a for loop over this result dot next, and I can process all the 10 rows. Like we use cursors in the SQL statement. Okay, here in JavaScript we can use result dot next to do row by row processing, but here I have only one row, that is with the row count. Okay, so I'm just putting one time, I'm not putting any for loop here. Okay, and the row count equals to whatever here, if you see, we are getting the row count and there will be only one column. If there are multiple columns in your output, how you can fetch those values? Okay, so this is how you can fetch result dot get column value, get column value of 1. That means whatever the value present in the column 1, you fetch that. If there are multiple columns, if you want to fetch the third column value, you can put like this, get column value of 3. Okay, so this is how we I'm calculating the row count. Okay, and returning that row count. Okay, so try to execute this. Okay, so I'm done with the stored procedure creation in the JavaScript language, and I'm calling this. So we can give any table here. Suppose in the above step we have created one table called customer sales. So I want to know the row count of that table. So how can we do? Call get row count of this table. This table is present in the public schema of my own DB. So I'm mentioning the complete path, complete name. Okay, call get row count of this customer sales table. Okay, how many rows? We have inserted 11 rows into the table, right? So here if you see, we had inserted 11 rows into the table. Okay, so that's why it is returning value as 11. So like that, for any table in our these things, we can get that. Okay, row count by using this stored procedure. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel, and if you have any doubts, you can reach me on this email ID. Thank you.